The Galactic Academy, perched on the edge of the known universe, was the pinnacle of knowledge and scientific exploration. The finest minds from every corner of the galaxy gathered here, representing dozens of species. It was more than a school. It was a symbol of interspecies cooperation, a place where cultures mixed and the limits of potential were pushed. Lush worlds with peaceful histories sent their brightest, while the more hardened planets, like Deathworlds, sent those forged by adversity. Earth, infamous for its hostile environment, had finally earned a place at the table, though its inhabitants were still treated with caution. Humans had only recently been invited to attend the Academy, a decision made grudgingly by many of the galaxy's leading powers. Earth was still regarded as a violent, unpredictable death world, and its people, though technologically advancing, were seen as dangerously volatile. As the humans arrived, they were met with curious stares and thinly veiled skepticism. The other species were used to more controlled, stable environments. Earth's people were something else, survivors of a planet that actively tried to kill them every day. The group of humans at the Academy was small, but carefully selected. Sarah, a biologist, had studied Earth's most dangerous ecosystems and thrived in them. Jake, an engineer, had a knack for creating complex systems out of scraps, a skill learned from generations of human survivalist mentality. Marcus, a natural leader and strategist, had an almost predatory instinct when it came to reading people and situations. They were aware of the perceptions surrounding them, wild, dangerous, unpredictable. But they didn't let it bother them. After all, survival was something ingrained in their DNA. From day one, the alien students viewed the humans with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. Many had never even visited a planet as hostile as Earth. They had evolved in environments of plenty where nature worked with them, not against them. The humans, by contrast, seemed to carry an edge, a roughness that was hard to define but impossible to ignore. They moved differently, spoke differently, always alert, as if waiting for something to go wrong. It made the others uneasy. The Academy soon announced the start of a new experiment, one designed to push all students to their absolute limits. The faculty framed it as a routine test, an opportunity for students to unlock hidden abilities, to see how they performed under stress. But there was a tension in the air, as if the experiment held a deeper purpose. All students, regardless of their homeworld, would be subjected to dangerous, life-threatening scenarios. They would be tested physically, mentally, and emotionally. It was designed to push them to the brink of their endurance, to simulate survival in the most hostile conditions imaginable. For many species, this was a daunting task. They had lived in peace for so long that survival wasn't something they often and thought about. But the humans? They seemed almost excited. There was an unspoken understanding among them that these kinds of challenges were what they had been built for. Earth had honed them in ways the other species couldn't fully understand. The alien students whispered among themselves, wondering how the humans would fare, some hoping for their failure, others curious to see if the rumors of Earth's dangers were true. As the experiment was outlined in detail, it became clear that this was no ordinary test. The simulations would throw the students into extreme environments, burning deserts, frozen wastelands, and dense jungles filled with hostile creatures. They would face challenges that required rapid adaptation, complex problem-solving, and intense physical endurance. Teams were formed, with a mix of species, and the goal was survival. Simple, but terrifying. There was an unspoken expectation that the humans might have an advantage. Earth had a reputation for producing life forms that could adapt to the most hostile environments, and there were whispers that humans were the ultimate survivors. The Academy administrators didn't say it outright, but their glances and the way they described the simulations hinted at something more. They seemed almost curious, almost eager to see how far humans could go when pushed beyond their limits. The human faculty, too, exchanged looks, subtle but telling. It wasn't arrogance, but a quiet confidence that perhaps the Academy had underestimated their students. Earth was a crucible, and these students had already passed tests the rest of the galaxy couldn't even imagine. There was something stirring, something just beneath the surface, that the Academy hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just that the humans were used to survival. They were built for it. Their history, their evolution on Earth, had prepared them for exactly this kind of challenge. The question wasn't whether they could survive, but what would happen when they were pushed too far. As the human students prepared for the experiment, they shared a quiet understanding. This wasn't just about proving themselves to the Academy. It was about revealing the truth of what they were, what all humans were, deep down. And that truth was something the galaxy might not be ready for. The simulations began without much fanfare. Each group of students dropped into environments specifically tailored to test their resilience. At first, the challenges were relatively simple: traversing uneven landscapes, navigating through harsh weather, and conserving resources in arid conditions. The human students moved through these trials with a quiet efficiency. They didn't stand out at first, blending into the mass of struggling alien students. But while others stumbled and faltered in the unfamiliar terrain, the humans pushed forward. Endurance came naturally to them, a product of generations surviving Earth's relentless conditions. The alien students, who came from peaceful and stable worlds, found themselves overwhelmed. What humans considered basic challenges, climbing jagged cliffs, enduring bitter cold, or rationing scarce food, proved far more taxing for species that had never been forced to evolve under such extreme pressures. It became clear that while the simulations were hard for everyone, they were simply another Tuesday for humans. As the simulations progressed, the difficulty ratcheted up. The environments became deadlier, filled with hostile creatures and nearly impossible survival scenarios. Students were forced to rely on their instincts, scrounge for food, and craft tools from whatever the simulated environments provided. The stakes were higher now. Alien students began to buckle under the stress, their bodies not designed for prolonged physical strain or constant vigilance. They grew weary, mentally and physically drained by the relentless demands of the experiment. But for the humans, it was different. As the danger escalated, something within them shifted. Their reactions became sharper, their movements more fluid, and their decisions quicker. The Academy staff watched, at first intrigued and then alarmed, as the humans started to not only survive, but excel. What had been a struggle for the other species became second nature for Earth's children. The humans weren't just enduring, they were adapting. The Academy had anticipated strong performances from their human subjects, but this level of progression? This was something else entirely. The alien students noticed it too. At first, they dismissed the humans as fortunate or lucky, but as time went on, it became impossible to ignore the fact that the humans were thriving in conditions that would crush others. They were solving problems faster, using their environments in ways no one expected. More than that, they seemed to be reading situations before they fully developed, reacting to threats with a precision that bordered on supernatural. The unease among the alien students grew. These Deathworlders were starting to look like something more than just survivors. In one particularly brutal scenario, students were pitted against a group of simulated predators designed to mimic real-world dangers. The creatures were fast, vicious, and relentless. Alien students scattered, struggling to organize any form of resistance. Panic set in as the simulated predators began to close in. For a moment, it seemed like the entire exercise would end in failure for all involved. But the humans acted differently. Instead of running, they formed a tight group, instincts kicking in as if they had done this 100 times before. Marcus, the natural strategist, took charge without hesitation, assessing the situation with cold clarity. He directed his team into defensive positions, using the terrain to their advantage. His movements were swift and deliberate, as if his body knew what to do before his mind had fully processed it. Sarah, who had always been attuned to the hot-on, alarms were raised, and a decision was made. The experiment had to be halted immediately. Orders were given to quarantine the human students, isolate them from the others, and contain the situation before it escalated any further. The humans were swiftly separated, escorted to containment zones under the watchful eyes of nervous security personnel. They weren't sure what was more terrifying: the new abilities manifesting in these Deathworlders, or the fact that they had no idea how far these powers could go. The human students, meanwhile, were reeling from the rapid changes they had experienced. There was a shared understanding between them now. The experiment had pushed them to evolve, to unlock something that had been dormant within them for millennia. Separated from their peers, the humans had time to reflect on what was happening to them. It was no longer just about survival. Their bodies, minds, and instincts were transforming. It was clear that whatever had been triggered in them wasn't going to stop. Their reflexes, their intelligence, their ability to manipulate their surroundings, it was all accelerating. They weren't just becoming stronger or faster. They were becoming something more than human, and the implications were as terrifying as they were exhilarating. Meanwhile, the alien students were left in the dark, watching the chaos unfold with a mixture of awe and fear. Some of them, especially those who had struggled during the simulations, viewed the humans as a threat, dangerous beings who could upend the delicate balance of galactic civilization. Others, however, saw potential. There were whispered conversations about the possibilities of harnessing these new abilities, of working with the humans instead of against them. But no one could agree on how to proceed. The Academy, once a beacon of cooperation, was now divided. Behind closed doors, the Academy's leaders debated their next move. It wasn't just about containing the situation anymore. It was about control. Some argued that the humans had to be neutralized, their powers suppressed before they became too powerful to manage. Others saw an opportunity to study the humans further, to unlock the secrets of their evolution, and perhaps apply it to other species. But all were in agreement. What had been awakened could not be left unchecked. As the human students grappled with their new reality, a more sinister truth began to emerge. It was revealed that the Academy had not been as innocent in its intentions as they had first claimed. The experiment had never been about simple discovery. From the very beginning, the Academy's leaders had known of humanity's latent potential. The simulations, the stress tests, these had all been designed with a specific goal in mind: to push the humans to evolve, to trigger the ancient survival instincts that lay dormant in their DNA. This was never a test of individual ability. It was an experiment to either control or suppress humanity's potential before it could destabilize the galactic order. The human students, once confused and overwhelmed by their transformations, were now enraged. They had been lied to, manipulated, used as pawns in a game they hadn't even known was being played. The Academy had seen their potential, not as something to nurture, but as something to control, to contain. They were never meant to succeed. They were meant to be managed, perhaps even eliminated, if they became too powerful. Marcus, Sarah, and Jake realized the full extent of the betrayal. This wasn't just an experiment. It was a deliberate attempt to keep humanity under the thumb of the galactic powers. Furious and disillusioned, the humans made a choice. They wouldn't be pawns any longer. The Academy had underestimated them once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The humans, now fully aware of their evolving abilities, began to plan their escape. They wouldn't sit in containment like lab rats, waiting for whatever decision the Academy's leaders would make about their fate. Marcus, with his sharpened strategic mind, took charge, formulating a plan to break out of quarantine. He knew that brute force wouldn't be enough. They needed to outthink the Academy's security. Jake, with his intuitive grasp of technology, hacked into the Academy's systems, bypassing firewalls and unlocking restricted areas with a speed and precision that would have been impossible before his evolution. Meanwhile, Sarah used her heightened senses to navigate the building's layout, avoiding guards and predicting their movements with eerie accuracy. It wasn't long before the human students were on the move. Their escape was swift and coordinated, a testament to how much they had changed. As they moved through the Academy's corridors, evading capture and disabling security measures, they realized that this wasn't just about escaping. It was about reclaiming control of their destiny. The Academy had sought to suppress them, to use them, but now the tables had turned. The humans were no longer mere students. They were a force to be reckoned with. As they reached the edge of the Academy's secure zones, Marcus paused. There was still so much they didn't know. The full extent of their powers, the true motives of the Academy's leaders, and what this meant for humanity's place in the galaxy. But one thing was clear: they couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. They would find the truth, no matter what it took, And when they did, they would ensure that humanity's potential would never again be something to fear or suppress. With a final, decisive move, the humans broke free, disappearing into the shadows of the galaxy. Their evolution had only just begun. The human students moved swiftly after their escape, wasting no time in spreading the truth about the Academy's hidden agenda. Through hacked communication channels and encrypted networks, they broadcast their experiences to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They detailed how the experiment had been rigged, how the Academy had known all along about humanity's latent abilities and had attempted to control or suppress them. The message was clear. Humans were evolving, and they could no longer be constrained by the limitations set by the galactic powers. The broadcast sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The humans didn't sugarcoat their message. They warned other species that humanity's potential could not be contained. Any attempt to control them would result in failure. Their abilities were not a fluke. They were the result of millennia of evolution on Earth, a death world where only the strongest and most adaptable survived. Now that these abilities had been awakened, the galaxy had no choice but to accept what humanity was becoming. The ripple effect was immediate. Across the galaxy, reactions poured in as alien governments and factions scrambled to address this new reality. For some, the revelation was met with fear and alarm. Alien leaders from the more stable, peaceful worlds saw humanity's transformation as a direct threat to the galactic balance. They had always viewed humans with suspicion, seeing them as volatile and unpredictable. Now, with their enhanced powers, humans seemed more dangerous than ever. The calls to contain or even eliminate this emerging threat grew louder in certain circles, as the ruling elite feared what humanity could become. But not everyone viewed humanity's evolution with fear. On fringe worlds and in underrepresented factions, there was a different reaction, one of curiosity, even hope. Some saw potential in forging alliances with humans, viewing their evolution as an opportunity rather than a danger. For those species that had been marginalized by the galactic order, humans represented a chance to upset the status quo, to challenge the old powers that had kept them in check for so long. If humanity could be harnessed, if they could be allied with, there was no telling what new possibilities could emerge for the disenfranchised and the oppressed. In the halls of power, the galaxy's ruling factions scrambled to respond. Some moved swiftly to suppress the spread of the humans' message, censoring communications and issuing propaganda that downplayed the significance of humanity's evolution. Others, more pragmatic, initiated covert operations to monitor and infiltrate the human movement, hoping to understand and, if possible, manipulate this new force. A few sought to open diplomatic channels, realizing that outright hostility could provoke a war they might not be able to win. Amid all this chaos, the human students who had escaped the Academy gathered in secret. No longer simply students, they had become something else, pioneers of a new human destiny. They had shed their former identities, embracing the powers that had been unlocked within them. What had started as an experiment meant to test their limits had instead set them free. And now, they stood at the crossroads of a new era for their species. Marcus, always the strategist, saw the need for unity. Divided, they would be picked off one by the forces that feared them. Together, they could not only survive, but thrive. They made a pact. They would protect their people, not just those at the Academy, but all of humanity, and ensure that no one would ever again try to control their fate. Sarah, with her heightened senses and intuitive grasp of danger, agreed. They could no longer afford to be reactive. They needed to be proactive, to anticipate threats before they arrived. Jake, ever the engineer, saw potential in their abilities that went beyond survival. He envisioned a future where humans could harness these powers for exploration, innovation, and expansion, on their own terms. But this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about securing humanity's place in the galaxy. For too long, humans had been viewed as the newcomers, the unpredictable outsiders in a vast interstellar community that had underestimated them from the start. Now, that perception was changing, and with it came both danger and opportunity. The human students realized that they stood at the heart of something much larger than themselves. Their escape had been the first step, but the real challenge lay ahead. The galaxy was on the cusp of a new era, and humanity would play a central role in shaping its future. With their newfound powers, the human students embraced the reality that they could no longer sit on the sidelines. They would have to confront the powers that sought to suppress them, navigate the alliances that others wanted to form, and prepare for the inevitable conflict that would arise as the galactic order shifted. But they were ready. They had been underestimated for too long. In the final moments, the human students stood united, looking out into the stars. They knew what was coming. The galaxy would not sit idly by and watch them rise. There would be battles ahead, both seen and unseen, as old powers tried to maintain their control. But this time, humanity would not bend. They were evolving, and they were ready to chart their own course. Whatever came next, they would face it head-on. The last spark of the broadcast still lingered in the air, a message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a species to be controlled, manipulated, or dismissed. They were now players in the game, perhaps the most dangerous ones of all. And as the humans turned to the future, the galaxy watched with bated breath, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again.